Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar by SimpleFi about using the SAP Datasphere to load data into an SAP Analytics Cloud planning process. So if some of you have followed the updates online, we changed a little bit the information in this presentation, mainly because last week, or no, it was a week before, on March 8th, SAP made an announcement where SAP Data Warehouse Cloud was rebranded at SAP Datasphere. So part of the presentation today will be to explain a little bit what's the difference, and then we'll go on with the main subject of the presentation. But before we start, let me introduce myself. I'm Eric Blondin, VP Planning, Platform, and Technology at SimpleFi, and I'll be the one really guiding you through the presentation today. If there are any questions, you should have a question section in the GoToMeeting app. So you ask your questions there, and towards the end, I'll be looking at those and answering any questions that are related to the presentation I did. And some other questions I may actually answer after the presentation as well. If you registered with your business email, I'll be able to send those answers back once the presentation is done. Total presentation shouldn't go much over half an hour. Booked a little more time in case there are a lot of questions. If there aren't, obviously, we should be done in it's likely over half an hour. Okay, so first of all, obviously, I see some names here I haven't seen in our presentations before. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction as who SimpleFi is, and then we'll move forward into the actual presentation on what Datasphere is and what the business data fabric is. Obviously, some of these concepts are words that are probably quite recent for a lot of you. So I'll just summarize it. This is not the focus of the presentation, but I feel it's really important because it really has an impact on what we did and how it's going to evolve going forward. Oops, let me change my slide. So who is SimpleFi? So SimpleFi, we're a firm of partners. We're focused on business process design, business content, and automation of planning, analytics, and consolidation solutions. We're entirely focused on SAP technologies, and we really are focused on these three business areas: planning, analytics, and consolidations. So last week, we don't have someone who was on an S4 rollout, then moving on to maybe SuccessFactors or something else. We are on the main technologies that SAP is providing to cover these requirements. These technologies, mostly nowadays on what we call the BTP platform, so business and technology platform. So yeah, same platform twice here, where we find SAP Analytics Cloud, SAP Datasphere, we used to be Data Warehouse Cloud, PAPM, and then historically, some of the tools that we were covering a lot, BPC, BW, and HANA on-prem. We still support them, obviously, but these are no longer really our core projects. We all have a lot of expertise. Myself, I'm certified on BW, and I have over 20 years experience on it, but this is no longer really what we focus on. And then group reporting, which is a bit separate in terms of technology stack, but this is something also we get quite involved in terms of projects. It's really, from a business process standpoint, this is really our sweet spot where we understand consolidation and planning. So this is why we keep on working with group reporting nowadays. Or initially, when we customers at BPC, this was all combined in one platform. Now it's split, but it's still the same business process we've really mastered. Separately, we've also launched and really encouraged some who may be interested, our separate platform, which is Planify, which really targets the mid-market, where we will manage your whole planning environment. You don't need to configure it on your end, maintain it afterwards. So we provide the content. I'm going to go quickly through that on the next slide, but this is something that can be quite interesting for mid-market that want to keep it simple at low cost. And we actually did a separate webinar really detailing our offering there. So still on the same technology stack, but you don't have to worry about that technology. We really help you manage it. And then obviously a lot of our content, which is won awards, and that content is the one that builds out the Planify platform, but it's also the content we use to kickstart our projects. So whether you really want to have your environment, you're going to manage it and need our help to implement, we will use the same content that is currently out of the box on our Planify platform to really help our customers who need to be efficient, quick growth, mid-market, don't want a whole platform to manage on their end, they don't have the capacity, but their requirements are pretty standard. So that's where our Planify platform is really of use. We have customers across all major geographies nowadays. So we have offices in Canada and US, but we have customers across Europe, in Asia, everywhere. So nowadays, with the ability to work remotely, location hasn't been as much of a requirement as before. And our company goal, as always, 100% references. We're not a huge Big Four company. We focus on this market. So our objective is really to get 100% references from our project. One last element that is going to be interesting for the presentation today is we're also an SAP Merger and Acquisition Ambassador. So we get involved with SAP for organizations are looking into mergers and acquisitions. And one of our scenarios in the sales margin is when you start having multiple sources, we know SAC can manage somewhat multiple sources, but it can quickly become tough to maintain. And that's actually the main component of our presentation today. So what is Planify? So really, the same technology we talked about, but here we really optimize your back office, how you organize it. I really encourage you to have a look at our website, some of our content, how long it takes to implement it with your data, with your environment, it's always low config deployment. So if you need something that's close to standard, but we do make adjustments. So do not hesitate to talk to us. And I'll just guide you very quickly to our YouTube channel, SimpleFi Solutions. If there's some interest, if you're wondering what this is all about, don't hesitate. There's a little 15-minute presentation on what that Planify platform really is. So that could be of great interest. That was done by our managing partner, John Essig. So this will explain to you everything you may want. Separately as well, as you can see, we do create webinars regularly on multiple subjects, always though on planning, analytics, and consolidation. And a part of what we'll be looking at today is kind of linking to sales and revenue planning in SAP Analytics Cloud. So that webinar was done about 11 months ago. It's quite a duration, about an hour. We're trying to make them a bit shorter nowadays. We understand people don't want to stand in front of a webinar for an hour. So here, a lot of the things I'm going to call out to at the beginning, you can have detailed presentation in this one. Sales and revenue planning from 11 months ago. It's quite a popular one, over 1,000 views. So do not hesitate and have a look at this because obviously I won't go through all those steps. I'll focus on the data integration part for today's presentation. Finally, about our content. So this is where we've invested a lot and thousands of hours on a lot of content in SAC, so SAP Analytics Cloud, on planning content. So you need to start a project on HR planning, expense planning, your costing, any intercompany eliminations in your planning or balance sheet, cash flows. All of this, we've built content that can be applied directly to your processes and really enables us to quick start projects. During the workshops, you already have a working solution we can discuss and move forward on. But this is not the focus of today's presentation. So after this slide here, we will start talking about the sales and margin planning, and then moving on to SAP Datasphere before going to the enhancements I discussed. So our content, the last thing that's important about this is we've built everything so that it works together. So as you build out, for example, your HR planning, and later you decide to implement your expense planning, well, we've already built the process that feeds from one into the other. So you have all your HR costs that will feed your expense accounts for cost. And then in the end, if you start needing P&L reporting and then become P&L planning, this feeds into yet another model, and all these flows are already pre-built. So you're able to really enable the environment very quickly with content we keep on optimizing and improving based on customer feedback and obviously SAP technology stack improvements. So sales and revenue planning. So what this content does, so I'm talking about improving it, but the first part is what does it actually do? So sales and revenue planning is really about converting your planned sales orders, open orders, your quantities, and build out your sales and margin forecasts. So based on those base drivers, so your quantities, your costs, your prices, which you can maintain, we build out the whole plan, and then at the end you can review, compare actuals with your budgets, and really are able to build up that plan as far forward as you need to, and using all the capacity of SAC. This is the content that I pointed you to that YouTube video a few minutes ago. So to understand and see it in action, go ahead and watch that other webinar that was recorded a month ago, 11 months ago. Lots of content where we can precede those budgets from actuals, from previous versions, apply some pricing assumptions, sometimes based on prior data, and then you make some adjustments based on what's happening right now, and then that keeps on building out your plan. You can maintain your plan in units, so you change the different units, you can change the different costs and different prices. So maintaining all of those, in the end, you end up generating your base, the first steps in your P&L related to your gross sales, your discounts, rebates, and everything to build out your net sales. And then with the added costs that you can bring in afterwards and everything, you can literally end up building your whole P&L starting with this application. And yeah, and there's the revenue recognition part, and then your dashboards that really enable you to analyze it. Don't want to spend too much time on this. There's a whole webinar on it already, as I mentioned. So it's there if you want to get that detail. If you want more the technology part that I'm going to discuss today, well, that's where I'm heading right now. So SAP Datasphere and the Business Data Fabric. If you've been following since March 8th, the blogs and the presentations from SAP, there's been a lot on it. So two things to keep in mind. So SAP Datasphere, it is Data Warehouse Cloud, okay? So the starting point is it's Data Warehouse Cloud that it was rebranded. But one of the reasons they're rebranding it is the objective for Datasphere is not to become only a data warehouse. It's really to become one of the central component in the business data fabric. Now, what is that business data fabric? I'll admit, 2 weeks ago, I had to look it up as well. So it's not a term I was used to, but it's a word that's really been discussed on the market. And Gartner actually made a lot of researches on it, presentations, they kind of how to build out your best business data fabric. We won't go into all of this today. That is not the objective, but it's really considered one of top priorities for data and analytics professionals nowadays to look at how you can bring out that business data fabric. I'll have one slide where I summarize what Gartner has to say about it. And obviously, if you need more information on it, you can read many blogs by SAP executives in the past 2 weeks that talk about how SAP is really improving on the business data fabric. And then Gartner and other sources, there's Wikipedia pages. It's a concept that's been generating a lot of talk in the past few years, but obviously right now SAP is really aligning itself with it. And what I'm going to bring is how SAP is doing it and what it's really going to bring to you. That's really the point of this part of the presentation. I won't go further into that subject. I could have made the whole presentation on it, but that wasn't the objective. So first of all, when we look at SAP Datasphere, so that slide, if you looked at Data Warehouse Cloud presentations just 2 weeks ago and before, that's the Data Warehouse Cloud presentation. So you have a Data Warehouse Cloud, as it says, you have your business layer, data layer. This is where you organize your data. It's a data warehouse in the cloud. So if you haven't guessed that one, where there's a lot of content. And one of the things that SAP has committed to is to invest a lot into that content now for connectivity, obviously to SAP landscapes, and make it much easier to integrate with those landscapes and make it as seamless as possible as you build it out in the Datasphere. Anyone who's been in this world for quite a while may remember that was how BW was being promoted years and years ago. But clearly, we are in two different worlds. As I mentioned earlier, I was a BW consultant for years, and let's just say that BW, once you were good at it, you were able to stay in the market because it took a while to really catch how everything worked. And once you did, it was an amazing tool, but it took a long time to master it. Data Warehouse Cloud, or sorry, I'll get used to it myself. Datasphere is really another world. It's actually extremely simple. It's really targeted as the basic functionalities, but if you need more advanced functionalities, they're available, but you're not kind of overwhelmed by so many functions in front of you that you don't know what to do, which was often the case with BW. You have those basic functionalities where your data layer, so IT or people who understand the data structure, will maintain it. Then a super user who understands the data, what's the logic, what's the customer, what's a company code, what are those concepts we want in reports that are probably very close to how the data is organized. But for a business user, you want to work with your business entities. You don't want to work with a column, a select, SQL, or whatever. So this is where really it brings a good balance between where IT and business users can really work together. And although we're talking about APIs, connectivity, space, obviously that's all standard in data warehouse. And where SimpleFi has really invested a lot in the past few years is that top section grayed out, because this is SAC, SAP Analytics Cloud. So now as SAP is integrating these platforms more and more, this is why we're investing a lot in the Datasphere. I'll get it. I'm still having trouble. I practiced yesterday trying to say Datasphere. Data Warehouse Cloud still comes out. So I'll get there. And so when we bring this and look at what this looks in terms of actual functionalities, again, this was the Data Warehouse Cloud slide. Won't explain it all, but you see SAP Analytics Cloud. This is really the final point. SAP Analytics Cloud does not need all of this. It can connect directly to these sources, but if some of you have used it, you still need, it needs a bit of maintenance to be able to get your data structured in the way you want it, and then having recurring loads. There are some challenges. There's always ways to make it work, but having your data sphere in between obviously makes it a lot simpler. There's a BW integration that's been heavily improved over the past few years. So if you're thinking, I have BW, why should I go there? Well, there's a transition path now that's available, and you can really convert it, and a lot of modeling functionality, as I mentioned already, and integration with SAP's environment. So lots of SAP environment and a lot of non-SAP environment, and the data flow, which it works. Okay, if you've looked at Data Warehouse Cloud presentations before, you can do some basic data flow, but most of it is in SAP Data Intelligence. One of the great announcements that came with Datasphere, though, is they're slowly migrating most of the functionalities that were in SAP Data Intelligence. So the whole ETL part, instead of staying as a separate tool, it's slowly coming into the Datasphere. So here we see it's kind of pushing in, and slowly the objective is to have the same functionalities around ETL, data acquisition, transformation, and everything that are today in SAP Data Intelligence. So they become part of the Datasphere. So we don't have two different tools. We want to get out of that old kind of mindset of you have a tool for each functionality. What you want here is, what the name pretty much implies it, a Datasphere. Everything around data goes through here, can be accessed through here, and that's the idea behind that renaming. So it's not only a data warehouse, it's also accessing virtually accessing data on other sources, and then integrating with everything else on BTP. I'm not going to go into the licensing model here, but the SAC right now is not exactly with Datasphere, but that's something that's also supposed to evolve. So we'll see. It's a big disclaimer here. So that's what I heard. So we'll see what's going to happen with this. But SAP Analytics Cloud and Datasphere, as you'll see, are fully integrated. So them coming together is just the next step. From, again, I'm saying from a licensing perspective, because technically it's already coming together quite a bit, and I will go through it. So once you have that data sphere, you do your business modeling, as I mentioned, and you can use graphical interfaces, or if your super user is comfortable doing some SQL, he can go directly and build a SQL in the background. He doesn't need to use the no-code, low-code interface. He can go and build out his own SQL scripts if that's what he's comfortable with. Obviously, the disadvantage of building everything in SQL script is if you have a user who comes in after who doesn't know it, it would have been easier for him if it had been all built using the graphical interface. But both options are there. But the end user perspective, that's fully business entities, so you don't look at code at all. And then the other end, it's really an open SQL schema. You have the whole HANA deployment infrastructure where you can really integrate it with full-blown HANA databases. There's actually a HANA database behind it that you can use to access and share information that is Data Warehouse Cloud, Datasphere, sorry, and use separate tools to access it. I'm actually going to bring out a little something a bit later just to show you how easy it is with a pretty much standard application that's non-SAP, that's available for free for everyone or a very low cost, and access all this information. You don't need to use all the SAP technology to access it. SAP has really changed our mindset to be a much more open infrastructure. And that's, again, that still brings us to that business data fabric idea where you want things to be all accessible as easy as possible. And that's really where the SAP's mindset has changed and is really going well along with where the rest of the market is going today. So what is that data fabric I keep on talking about? Okay, so as defined by Gartner, and I took a straight reference, so none of this is from me specifically. This is all coming from Gartner's public site. But data fabric is not only a combination of data, but it's a design concept, okay? So the idea is really, you know where to go and analyze some information, but slowly as technology evolves, we've all seen those chat GPT blog posts or presentations or videos that people trying so many things in there where the machine is doing more and more for you. Why couldn't we enable it to help us in our analysis as well? And at some point, it can learn what we're looking for, what it should bring up, what is not as important to help us guide and be more efficient. So you change the way you design it and you integrate all new and upcoming technologies so you can really capitalize on what these technology can do to improve. You still keep that access where you want to do the whole analysis because that's what you're comfortable with. And I'm sure that's always going to exist. You want to be able to control what you're looking at. But separately, you're always going to have some users who want to get some information. And as you validate and you see that the embedded machine learning is helping them understand the data much more efficiently, find what they need much more efficiently, that's where the combination of these two into a common design, that's really what helps build out that data fabric. Then the third one is something we've been seeing since ever. I've been in this field. So I built data warehouses in the 90s, and we were already trying to do this. That's always what we're talking about with self-service, with reporting, with analytics, predictive. It's try to limit the repetitive tasks. So the idea with machine learning and everything can do nowadays is to automate it even further, because the system, in some cases, the moment you need to tell the system how to automate it, you know that the next time there's going to be a change, you'll need to do it again. So that's where, again, the whole design idea behind the business data fabric is to make sure you don't have to do most of it. You can just validate. You always have people to kind of control what is happening, but try to automate them as efficiently as possible. One last thing that Gartner says is there is no existing and probably never will be an existing standalone solution that can facilitate a full-fledged data fabric architecture. So what they're saying, and this is from 2021, so this sentence is not coming from years and years ago. We can build amazing data fabric architectures. We can combine solutions, but it's never going to complete. Often you'll need to customize things to your specific requirements. And that's actually the path that SAP has taken. Historically, data solutions at SAP were pretty focused on SAP technologies, trying to slowly open them. But more and more now, it's really, let's make this the hub to facilitate the access to multiple information, but not only access, because we all know there's always that database, that system, that component that SAP doesn't have a process to access. So you're stuck. Oh, I can't do it, so I'll need to go through a flat file. I'm sure I don't know how long everyone on this call have been working with SAP technologies, but this is, and I'm saying SAP because this is real where I spend my time, but it's the same with any technology. There's always something that does not integrate. There's always something that you'll need to do manually. So that's where SAP, Microsoft, any other technology companies cannot do it alone. And that's where Datasphere is really trying to open that whole idea and start working with different other partners. So as a first release of Datasphere, they already announced a few non-SAP technologies that will fully integrate with Datasphere. So this is a slide I took directly from the announcement, where we had Databricks, Confluent, Calibra, Data Robot. So if you don't know what those are, you're not the only one. But people who have been working that field for quite a while, these are some of the big names that help on very specialized components. Just taking Data Robot, it's a lot into machine learning. So all these components they're working outside of SAP today. They access a lot of information. Some of them integrate cloud platforms from everywhere, a lot of open source. And well, there's always been, you have SAP or you go open source. Now the idea is you can't do that. You want to have a real data fabric, you need to be able to access everything that's available, and you'll never finish building technologies to access it because there's always something new. And what you built last year, no one's using it anymore. So you need to build something new, and that's where you can't do it alone. And with this new Datasphere idea, this is what's going to be possible. So you're going to be able to access SAP, non-SAP data, applications, data, classic data warehouse, cloud data warehouses, or lake houses. So if you're following a little bit this world, so data lake, big data, everything. So a lake house, it's just the design concept behind it, some design concepts behind it. Relational database, so a classic database, and unstructured, semi-structured data. So if you're looking at this, you're there, well, isn't that what we've been hearing for years? All these things? Yes. But the big change here is you don't no longer need to see at SAP tickets when's the next connector going to be available, where is that going to work. They're really opening it to companies and products that specialize in these things and then fully integrate through Datasphere. So you, again, for your users, you give them access to Datasphere, and as they need to enrich that data fabric, they can do it, getting data from multiple areas, multiple sources, multiple applications as they require it. Once that is in there, well, that's where the final step, which is you have SAP Analytics Cloud that allows you to analyze it, or through which you build out your plan, Office integration through, I think that's something else I think I've heard since I started working over 20 years ago is, yeah, we want to get rid of Excel. Actually, I think people have started figuring out that you cannot get rid of Excel, but what you want is to have some data governance as to what goes in Excel, so and that it can be managed centrally. And that's what we have here with MS Office integration with SAC and Datasphere through the similar add-on. So the one that works with SAC is actually a Microsoft Office 365 add-on, which in my case, you don't see it right now in the way the presentation is done, but I'm a big Mac user. I love Macs. I've been on them for years now. And obviously, when you needed an analysis for Office, for the ones who have been in there for a while, you need it to be on Windows. So obviously I always had that little Windows virtual machine just for when I needed that tool. But now with those add-ons being built in Office 365, it doesn't matter, it's Excel. So Excel on a Mac, Excel on a PC, Excel through the web, it's the same add-on. So it makes it much simpler to access all of this information. Obviously, lots of third-party APIs. A lot of them we hear about, some you may not be as familiar with, but yes, we can access that information through those third-party tools. So if in the end you build all this, but you don't see the point of doing planning in SAP Analytics Cloud, you have something else in your environment, go ahead. Datasphere supports it. The idea, again, is to be as open as possible. And business content I mentioned earlier, obviously that can accelerate it, probably on SAP technologies to start with, but as we go forward, more and more different technologies as well. So in the end, you have your data sources from multiple areas, multiple concepts, applications, everything. This brings through your data layer in Datasphere, you have a business layer, and then you access all this through Analytics Cloud. This is where we're bringing our content at SimpleFi today. Historically, what we've done, and it's still feasible, and we still do projects that work that way, where we don't use all of this. The sources are straightforward. They can be SAP or non-SAP in the SQL database, or just another cloud platform that SAC, so I keep on saying SAC just to make sure everyone understands it's S, A, and C, right? Everyone is aware of that acronym. I usually explain at the beginning, I'm not sure I did. So SAP Analytics Cloud can connect to those platforms, but you need to kind of organize it as efficiently as possible, and then you bring into your models and build out your plans. But in some cases, that can become too complex, too many sources, too many rules. That's where Datasphere works. We've actually done this with BW for places who have BW, but if you don't have BW, or you know you're going to need to do big changes there, this is where, again, maybe you'll want to go with Datasphere as a first step. And if you have no clue what these acronyms are, maybe this is a great first step as well. Now, in our context, so this is the end of the SAP slide. So that came out very recently, so I did not have time to build out SimpleFi slides. So those were mostly SAP slides, but I found summarized quite well this subject. But if we're talking about sales and margin data integration, I know I'm already going on time. So let's imagine, okay, so let's ignore the technical structure here, but you have two companies, okay? You bought one of them. So here, SimpleFi, we bought Best Run Bikes, okay? Surprisingly, I think every single SAP partner buys Best Run Bike at some point because we all have it as an example. But that's the advantage. There's already data available there. So you have those two companies. They're totally structured differently, but you want to integrate it into plan. Historically, what we do, we take this, we export to Excel or through a file because we know it's going to be short term. So let's do this short term in a file and load it into our planning platform and work from this. Well, how often have you heard short term and it ended up not being short term? So that's what we're trying to solve with Datasphere, because sometimes that short term can last quite a bit depending on different challenges. If you know it's going to last short term, maybe you still want to do it manually. There's no point in investing something like that if it's short term. Or if it's short term, but you're going to have a dozen of short terms during the year, again, Datasphere will help you. So you have those two different structures. You want to have this, so pretty much a square peg trying to fit in that round hole. So it's not going to work. You need to make some adjustments. So you can do it in Excel, or you can capitalize on the Datasphere. So how do you do that? Because Datasphere, you have this relational modeling, and SAC, well, you bring it into the star schema where you have your dimensions and you build out your plan. So first of all, the objective is to have your data in SAC for planning. This is where the planning process is happening. But the data, the detailed data with all your rules, you want to have it in Datasphere to have a lot more flexibility in your plan. So you will store your data there. You build out all your business rules, data quality, and build out all your ETL processes to really have that financial view. Now that's fine, but I'm still not in my planning component. How do I bring and clean it up so that it fits in my planning model? So there are many integrations possible, as I mentioned already. There are also some live APIs on the web that can be used, for example, exchange rates, where you want to import that efficiently. And then there's data cleaning that you can do with a Python or SQL. So again, this is typically more for people on the technical side that will do this part. But what's interesting is everyone on the market knows, well, not everyone, sorry, let me rephrase that. Every company that is invested in data analytics for the past 2 years probably has people for sure that know SQL, and probably has people that knows Python as well. It's one of the most popular languages to manipulate data on the market today. So I'm not talking about ABAP here. I'm not talking about any of those languages that we've come to take as common in the SAP world. Let's again use what everyone uses to be as efficient as possible at it and be able to share and integrate that data. So once you clean that up, it's in your Datasphere. How does SAC pick that data from Datasphere? Well, it uses a no data connector. So again, no SAP specific acronym where you need to do a BICS connection that has this stuff in the background or whatever. OData connectors is pretty much an open standard that's available through the web that allows you to connect between environments. So what I'm saying here is you could use something else to do your planning and connect to the Datasphere. Obviously, I strongly recommend using SAP Analytics Cloud, but the integration is an open standard. And then you have that view, you access and load directly into SAC. So bam, your Datasphere data that you've cleaned up, structured and everything, you take the parts of it that you need for your plan, load that into SAP Analytics Cloud. And then financial planning, you do your plan and everything. And at the end, how do you send that data back to Datasphere? So it's a Datasphere can act as a data warehouse as well. Obviously, historically, that was its first purpose. So it, again, connects to SAC through a no data connector again. So in both directions, we're using an open standard. We take that data through Datasphere data flows, update our Datasphere tables, and that forecast that you built in your planning tool is now centralized through no custom development other than modeling your data, and you're able to access it through live reporting that brings in data from so many sources and having all the flexibility of Datasphere using the standard planning components I've shown you well, I haven't shown you. I've shown you where to look at the video if you want to have more details on it. Sorry. So how do you do some of these things? Like here we're saying that incremental load between the two environment and Python. How do you apply it in there? So do you need something separate or whatever? So first, I decided to bring one example. Okay, so one example. So let's imagine one of the systems, and we've seen that a few times, is you have your accounts. Okay, that's some cost accounts. Okay, so raw material costs, manufacturing overhead. Then you have your COGS here, sales rebates, and some information that's gross sales. So you have a hierarchy, but it's kind of upside down for what we would typically be used to for example, in most SAP technologies, typically you have the parent and then goes down into more detail and it repeats. But here it's actually for this row, this is the data we need. But for this row, it's here, it's not in the same column. So if there's nothing in the next column, this is what we need to take. This is what I should take. This is what I should take. So here, a normal load, it can be kind of annoying. You're going to check if it's null and then put that value in another one, so that in the end you get something that looks a little bit like this. You have one column of the account. So in this case, the rows we're seeing is this one here. But if I got here in this column, it should be gross profit. And then if it was in here, maybe it was not net sales and so forth that I wanted to load. So I go from 8 columns to 4 columns. So there are ways we can wing it when we use, for example, wrangling in SAP Analytics Cloud, you can make it work. But going with Python, it's actually quite simple. Obviously, if you've never seen Python, I won't explain the code specifically, but just to show that with 9 lines of code, we've done this where we're combining it and bring it all back into one column that we can then load into that central table and use it. So you haven't needed to go and invest so much time looking at different things. If you know a bit of Python, you build that logic, you remap those columns based on some criterias that are typically business defined or that are specific to whatever source database you have. And in the end, it's in the same interface we have for Datasphere, and it feeds into that table that will then be read by SAC. If I look quickly at this here, so here I'm in SAC. So this is the environment I've been talking about where you can go and do your P&L target setting. I timed out, right? Yeah. So for example, you're setting up your top line targets and everything, and you have your actuals where you can compare the target you're setting compared to the actuals, and you're really able to build out your budget in this interface and have it validated from other users. But all that integration, so it's another link or whatever, it's actually up here, hasn't been changed from an SAP Analytics Cloud side, because here I'm in SAP Analytics Cloud. If I go to what they call the data warehouse, I actually end up in SAP Datasphere. So now you are in SAP Datasphere, and if I actually click on this slide, the update was done. So it's called Datasphere, and SAP Analytics Cloud is Analytics. So I guess on the next SAP Analytics Cloud update, that name will change as well. So we'll see Datasphere, and this is where we can see all this data that was integrated. So we have access to the different tables. And one other thing, so what's interesting is you can organize everything by area. So this could be different departments, and each area is pretty much independent from the other one. So you don't want to be afraid if a user, you assign him to an area, he's only going to see that area. So it really makes it easy to manage security, so that you don't have to manage by table or whatever. If you have a finance area, procurement area, then some users can have overall access to many of them, but you can grant it by area, so you don't need to do it table by table. It makes security management much easier. And then here we have all the different tables and views that were created that support that process I mentioned earlier. And I was talking about making it flexible, easy to integrate with something else. So I don't know if you know this tool, but whoops, I'm sorry, I'm looking at another screen trying to bring it across. Here we go. So here, dbeaver, it's actually, I'm using the community version here that's free, as long as it's not for actual development. In this case here, it's to validate the connectivity. So dbeaver, it's a free, you can have it free, you can pay a corporate license as well. But in this case, just to validate the connectivity to, that's the area I have access to as a user in Data Warehouse Cloud. So when I opened it, I'm in P&L report book. So if I look at the database in the background, the name is obviously a bit different, but it's P&L report book. So that's the area I'm actually, the space, sorry, using the right word, I'm using, it actually becomes a database schema in the background. So that database schema contains pretty much all the tables that we're seeing here. So you can see them, you can go and open one and you see the different columns. So you have access externally to view all this information. And then as a user, I've been granted write access to this. So it creates kind of a separate schema that works with that one. But this one here is, I can actually create a table that I can then access from within Data Warehouse Cloud. So here, this is a table that I can write to from an external application. So again, I can use some standard tools, and I haven't opened my Python designer. So, but what I could do with Python is call out that table. So I could open a local file, execute Python, and write the result in that table that I created. And then within Datasphere, continue processing it. So you don't even need to create your Python within Datasphere. You can do it externally, feed some tables you've defined, and then keep on working on it. So either Python directly in here, so you have literally your script in Datasphere, or you manage it externally, feed a table, and then continue processing it. So do you want to work 100% on Datasphere? Do you want it partial because you already have a big Python or other environment? The choice is yours, and that's really the direction SAP seems to be taking on all of these, and I feel this brings great enhancements to the content we're able to build out for SAC Planning and all your data management requirement behind it as well. So I hope you found it interesting. I see that I went over a little bit in my discussion, so I hope everyone found it interesting. When you're going to exit the webinar, please do not hesitate to put out any comments. Those comments, I read them all, and there are sometimes interesting improvements on how I do my webinars, or something you'd like me to zoom in a bit more. Last time I did a somewhat similar one. There were some comments, so that's why this one here we repeated, but did it with a bit more details on some subjects. So I hope that was of much information. Thank you all for your time. That was all I was presenting today. So hope to see you in person at an event very soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.